What is up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Big Red Machine. I am, of course, the general manager of the TGS Cincinnati Reds, Chris Jardine, a.k.a. Snaggle J. And today, we're going to accomplish two things. Number one, we're going to talk the Linc and Lanu trade. And then number two, I'm going to answer some of your burning questions as asked in the Discord. We have a few questions to go through. So, we're in the off season now. We're into expansion. So a big welcome to your kidneys and Mike ABC, who are going to be taking over the Houston Astros and the Montreal Expos, respectively. Glad to have you guys in the league. Should be a lot of fun. But in the lead up to that, there were some big trades leading into the last night's sim, which was going to be the bringing us to the having to set our protection lists and all that stuff. I'm not going to be revealing my protection list. Everybody will be able to find it out when the sim goes through on, I think it's Wednesday. So not going to be talking protection list. I will tell you my protection list is not very sexy. I don't really have anybody exposed that, anyone's going to find, super intriguing. So whatever. But lots of big trades last night. I think it was, there was maybe some... I think it was maybe two things. I think one, you had some teams that maybe had a surplus of quadruple A players that they were going to have exposed, maybe trying to move some of those. But I also think people are trying to retool and they're looking at the free agent crop this season and they're like, hey, this is maybe a really good time for me to move out some guys that, maybe should have outlived their usefulness for me or whatever, and bring in some new blood and bring in some new guys. I mean, you saw, the Red Sox traded Grayson Ailman and Seth Woodward, and they got Lou Hinton and some prospects back. We saw the Yankees trade Duke Reel. And then obviously, we traded who most people would say is the face of the TGS Cincinnati Reds, Linc and Lanu, to the Yankees for a package of 5 players. And we're going to break down that trade. We're going to break down that trade today. I think so here's the thing I want to make, and man, that's a weird looking thing, Lanu with his traditional soul patch and thin goatee missing. I think the big thing for me, and I'm going to own up to this and I'm going to wear this one. I should have traded Lanu right from the jump. Right when I took over the team at the end of the 2027 season, I should have traded him right then. I also should have traded him after 2028. He came off of a couple of really good years. I think I missed out on the window to get max value for Linc and Lanu. And that's on me, and that's part of, learning the league and the landscape and not becoming too attached to players, even though I had no part of Linc and Lanu being drafted. I loved him. Great center fielder. He hit above his weight for a couple of years there, the year before I came and the year after I took over specifically. But I think the Linc and Lanu, and I don't think it's going to go down as a catastrophic mistake that I've made. But I do chalk up how I've handled the Linc and Lanu situation as probably not optimal. Because again, now he's coming off of a bad year where he's lost 5 outfield range, which is huge. We had signed him to an extension, which again, hindsight being what it is, do I think he still would have given us $11 million worth of value? I mean, if he goes back to being a 5 wins above replacement outfielder, absolutely. I think even as, if he could get back up into the 3 range with, 40 steals, hitting maybe 250 and playing, above average center field defense, I mean, yeah, that's worth $11 million, and it's worth $15 million in the couple of years that are to follow. But I just think one of the things that, as I got ready for the offseason, was, what? It's time to go. The shine is starting to come off a little bit. Again, losing that 5 range. Again, 75 outfield range is still really good. It still puts you in the upper echelon of outfielders in this league, but it's not 80. And you have a guy that, I feel like finally was exposed for not being a very good hitter. I mean, literally everything around on the board was down. You had, and a lot of this is the byproduct of our team being awful, but 34 less runs, 37 less hits, 10 less doubles, 5 less home runs. He did have some more walks, more strikeouts. So the walk rate is up, the strikeout rate is up, the extra base hits are down 18, the total bases are down almost 70. The steals are still good, 50-point drop in batting average. And ultimately, a 3.5 wins above replacement drop, which, again, a lot of people look at that as, well, there's your value going out the window. Now, obviously, I dabbled a little bit with trading Linc at the deadline. Nothing really materialized. We decided to hang on to him at that time. But going into the offseason and looking at what I'm facing in the next 3 years, it made sense to move Linc and free up most of that money, continue to bring in assets that can either A, help this ball club long term, or B, give us potential trade chips where we can, turn guys into more guys. It's one of those things where, we're trying to do we're trying to stick with what we've done all along, which is we're preparing the team for 2032, 2033, and trying to build long-term future health of the team. So we, last night it came together really well. I mean, great trading with Grimes. It was an easy conversation. We both laid out what we wanted. We were able to make it work. So Linc is a Yankee, and it hurts and it stings. But I think ultimately, we're going to be long-term, we're going to be better off. So we look at what we got back. So first up, we have Roman Tannen, who, again, doesn't look super sexy on paper, not a super great hitter, not a defensive wizard, but he does have some defensive flexibility, and he's a fan favorite. He's got good traits. He can hit the ball a little bit. What this is for me is this is essentially trying to replace Jackson Cocken, who we're using as he's a captain profile, which we've addressed in another trade. So we brought in a different trade. We brought in Philander Munoz, who is a captain profile. So that gives us another captain on the team. But so the big draw here with Tannen is he's 24, so he's got some control. He can contribute not a lot with the bat, but he has some defensive flexibility. He's a fan fave, so he helps out the fan interest, which again is going to be key for us. We want to keep that fan interest up. We want to keep butts in the seats. We want to keep the revenue flowing in. We've already had a couple, substantial, one big substantial, and then one minor budget drop. We want to try to avoid those. As we start ramping back up, we don't want to have a big budgetary hole to climb out of when we're ready to go out and get big free agents. So Tannen gives us some positional flexibility, a bit younger, fan fave, good traits. So, again, not super sexy, but gets the job done. We also have Redford Jones. Now, Redford Jones might not be the long-term solution at third base, but he's probably going to be our starting third baseman in 2030. Again, you guys know we've had some problems at third base. The Carson Caston, Liberio Cubas platoon didn't work out. We gave Liberio Cubas the job, but I think Redford Jones provides us a little more long-term stability. His defense is okay. You'd like to see maybe a little more arm here. He does have the ability to play some outfield, 45, 55, 60 in the outfield, so he does give us some flex there as well. He hits lefties really well, which again, that continues to cause a problem for us with third base against righties, but long off season, so we'll figure that out. But again, I like Redford Jones. He's 23. He's ready to rock and roll. So we're probably, if he doesn't start the season in the big leagues, he probably won't be long behind. So a nice piece for it to get. Is he going to be a long-term permanent solution at third base? We'll see. He might have some increased value now because, again, for those of you who didn't notice, we are renovating Great American Ballpark to be more offensive friendly, especially in the home run department. I think we're going from like 0.79 to 1.1 home runs for righties. So, we could definitely see Redford Jones pop 20 bombs this year, which would be great and would, provide a little bit of right-handed hitting flexibility in the lineup. Woody Coons is going to be a nice outfield piece. Again, my big issue here is 45, 45, 45, not great in the outfield, but we could probably live with it in the short term. 24, I think ultimately he's probably going to be destined for a spell guy, a big bat on the bench, might get some reps at DH. Again, lefty power, 60 home run power. He's ready to go. He had 24 home runs for Scranton Wilkes-Barre in AAA last year, 338 as well, which is a very, very nice piece. Again, low end, he can be a bat on the bench. He's probably going to see some time in the outfield. We'll probably see some time at DH. I don't think he can play first. No, he doesn't look like he's going to be able to play first. So, but again, another nice young controllable piece with Woody Coons. Then we come to the two guys that I was really trying to get. First up, we're going to take a look at Ryland San Juan. Again, I've been saying this for every episode of Big Red Machine. Pitching, pitching, pitching. We need to continue to work on improving our pitching. We need to try to get these guys in. Nobody's given up top-tier pitching unless they're in the big leagues making $20 million a year. It's just not happening. So we got to get these above average minor league guys, and I also don't think we really have the capital, to be honest, to go out and trade for, a Grayson Ailman, for example, right? I just don't think we have the capital for that at this moment. So, we bring in these middle guys. San Juan, again, 50, 55, 55. He could, hit a TCR. He does have maybe a little bit of velo here he can gain. He obviously still has 5 to go. Could maybe hit some movement. He's 23, so he's getting up there. He does have some good minor league stats. So again, potential back of the rotation guy. We get him in there. He's going to go to our really strong AA team, so he's going to be in a really good environment, really good attitudes. He does have some improvement to do with his pitches here. You see the slider and the curveball. We pop a couple of these, could give him some movement, bing, bang, boom, and he's in the conversation as a back end of the rotation guy in the big leagues. But the other one is James Gaspard, who's had a very interesting journey, right? Gaspard was drafted by the Browns, did not sign. The Yankees signed him, and then, use him as a piece to trade to us to get Lincoln Lanu. 50, 50, 60, which, again, I don't hate. He's got 3 above average pitches. So at the very least, if we turn him to a reliever, he goes to 55 stuff, which is not great. So, he has 3 great pitches. I do think that he does have a future as a starter. He's 22, just turned 22. So we're going to start him in the minors and see what happens. Again, if we can get one of these 2 guys to pop, that would be huge. So all in all, we get 5 guys who provide, some of them, 3 of them provide immediate usefulness, but all of them provide some level of being able to contribute to a team in 2 to 3 years, which is what we're trying to do, which is what we're trying to focus on. So again, obviously in these kind of deals, time will tell if it ends up being a win for us or a win for the Yankees. Grimes has a very, very strong team over in New York. Maybe Lincoln Lanu puts them over the edge and they're lifting a trophy next year, which would make it immediately seem like, what the hell did I do? But I do think, again, the big thing is, as I was going through Lincoln Lanu conversations with other teams, it was apparent that his value was not perceived to be as high as it was originally 2 years ago, which again comes back to the whole, I fucked up. I think what I did, and this is not, I'm not blaming anybody, but I think I let the mystique of Lincoln Lanu get to me to a certain extent. Obviously you can't predict, him going from a 5 WAR season to a 1.5 WAR season and, dropping 5 range. But everybody loses their range eventually. I think the mystique of Lincoln Lanu was such that I really was that's why we signed him to an extension. That was one of those things where, we didn't want to, we didn't want to upset what had been done. But I think we've moved past Lanu. I had a conversation with another owner last night. It's like, hey, that was really the last stamp of turning it into your team. And again, I just wish we had been a little wiser with it and maybe had moved on, a year and a half ago so that we could have potentially gotten greater value. So now we have to dig out of that hole of where we had this blue chip that is now kind of a light blue chip because some of the sheen has worn off. Still happy with the trade, happy to move on, and we'll see where it goes. So let's now get to the second part of this episode, where I'm going to answer some of your guys' questions. First up, the Pirates ask, who are you going to take with your number 2 pick so I can pick them? The answer is easy. The guy that you don't take. Realistically, and X and I have had this conversation. The way things are shaking out now, there really is, a consensus kind of top 3 outfielders. They all offer something a little different. There's some have the youth, some have the traits, some have kind of a little combination of both. But realistically for me, I think while I would have preferred to finish dead last so that the choice would be mine and mine alone, I don't think I'm going to be disappointed if, I don't think it's one of those things where I'm locked in on one guy. I think there's really 2 guys and either of them would be fine. And having the second pick means I'm going to get one of them. So realistically, my answer is the number 2 pick is the guy that you don't take at number 1. The D-backs ask, who has been your favorite draft pick to date? That's really hard because, to be a favorite, I feel like you'd want to see some track record of success. But I have 2. Nat Rowlands is one. He was our 7th rounder in the 2028 draft. Again, he doesn't have a great profile. He can't play a lick of defense, but I loved watching him absolutely just destroy the minors. He didn't have a bad season with the bat in the big leagues. Do I think Nat Rowlands is going to be our long-term answer at second base? No. But I was very happy to get him when I picked him. He was on my radar for a little bit in that draft. I loved what he did in the minor leagues. I loved having him on the team this year. There will come a day when he outlives his usefulness because his defense is just not good enough. But we're going to enjoy it while we can. I think the other one for us is obviously Jaden Krause. Jaden Krause, who again, is knocking on the door of the big leagues. Again, one of those guys, if he doesn't start the season on the big club, he won't be long coming up. I'm concerned. He's missed some time with injuries. Since we drafted him just prior to the draft, he's been out for 4 months, 5 weeks, 7, 8 weeks. But I am looking forward to seeing what Jaden Krause can do. Is he going to play second base? Is he going to play corner outfielder? Who knows? But I'm looking forward to. Jaden Krause could very well end up being one of my favorite draft picks, but I have a feeling the guy that I take at 1-2 in the 2030 draft might top that, if you ask me that question again in a future episode. Back to the Pirates. Lessons learned in year 2. The big lesson I learned in year 2 was to pay more attention to what's going on in the minors. And I talked about this on a previous episode. I think, making sure your minors are structured properly, that your teams are happy, that you have captains at your minor league teams that you care about, that you're not just worried about traits in the big leagues, you're worried about traits across the board. That was a huge, huge lesson for me. Because I think in 2028, my first season, I really didn't pay a lot of attention to the minors. Again, the minors at that point were, barren. But I think the guys that we did have down there, I didn't do a really good job of making sure they were grouped together, making sure they were happy. The kind of factors that can accelerate their development or help pop a TCR. So that was something in year 2. And again, I talked about this, about really putting my eggs in the AA Chattanooga and the low A Dayton baskets, where we really group those 2 teams to kind of be our juggernauts of prospects. So that was a lesson that, I think it was hard for me to learn because I don't think I've ever played the core game that way. I think you look at the minors in the core game a lot, and I know I'm guilty of this, is you look at it more on a prospect basis and not on a team basis. So that was a big thing I learned in year 2. Who is the cornerstone of a future Big Red Machines team? I think, again, we can talk about Jaden Krause again. I really think Jaden Krause is going to be one of those guys that, he could, again, he's not ever going to be a top tier player, but I think he's the kind of guy that, we're going to be able to use, and I think he's going to be one of them guys that we really like to keep. I hope Afonso Santiro works out. I really hope Afonso Santiro figures it out and becomes anything along this lines with this defense. I've said that before. I said it in the minor league look around that 2030 was going to be a huge year for Santiro towards starting to get yourself into big league shape. I really feel like I'm holding out hope that he can figure it out because I think if he gets anywhere close to this, it could be huge, and he could be an absolute terror at the hot corner. So I think those two guys are probably going to have, hopefully on Santiro's side, and I think it's relatively certain on Krause's side, injuries notwithstanding, that they could be kind of big pieces of the franchise for years to come. What return did you set out for with Lincoln, and was it close to what you got? I think, again, I talked about this a little bit earlier, right? I think, it was obvious early on with a few conversations I had with other GMs that Lanu's value around the league was dropping, which I think is one of those things that, is an error in judgment that I made. So my return really was, I was trying to get, again, like I do in all the trades, trying to just get quality pieces in return that could have a future with the team. Did I achieve a return that I felt met my expectations? It's a hard question to answer because, again, the perceived value of Lanu around the league was dropping. So I would say at this point, I'm happy with the return I got. I like the players that we brought in from the Yankees. But ultimately, for me, the proof's going to be in what do we do from here? Whether those guys become regular contributors or whether we end up moving those guys in other trades to other teams, does the sum of all parts mean we're a better ball club? And that's my hope. What's the thing? What's been the thing you found most challenging in TGS that you were not worried about prior to joining? I think prior to joining, my biggest worry was I was joining a league with a bunch of very intelligent OOTP players who had a strong ability to be able to create their own data evaluation sources. That was my biggest worry. The most challenging thing I found in TGS so far is plotting my own way. We have so many people who we know, whether they're doing it and sharing it with people, such as Zips or Sucka or any of the other, evaluatory tools that people are using and putting out there. I think the biggest challenge for me that I've found, and I don't know if that necessarily wasn't something I was worried about, but it's getting over the smart aspect. I'm never going to be the smartest person in this league. I have no problem admitting that and saying that out loud. So for me, the most challenging thing is how do I use my knowledge of playing the game and learning different aspects of the game and apply that. So I think that's been really challenging because I think, does that mean that, I do detailed analysis in Excel, which I have been doing more and more as we've gone on. I started with doing draft related stuff for 2028. I've now expanded that to more postseason or end of season evaluatory things. But I think the most challenging thing is just, is getting in that mindset that I'm never going to be the smartest game player in this league, so I have to try and be smart in other areas, whether it's how I use my stadium, how I deploy my lineup, how I deploy my pitching staff, and just work to what works for me. And I think that would be, if someone was new coming into the league and was intimidated by some of the people who were in the league, and it's just one of those things, man. It's one of those things where you got to stay out of your own head sometimes, and just really trust what you're trying to do and get it moving. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for all their questions. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. Now we're getting into the real fun. We're into the expansion draft. We're into free agency. Baby, the free agent pool is looking great. Yeah, lots of exciting things to come for TGS and for the Big Red Machine. So thank you guys for watching. And until next time, keep swinging for the fences.